What would you think if I told you that people fought in dungeons as priests and knights way before video games? And I'm not talking about going back to the Crusade here, or whatever this is. No, I'm talking about something that was seen as satanic or deviant in the United States and the UK in the 70s and 80s, role-playing games. Today, RPGs are woven into pop culture. From Community to Stranger Things to E.T., they're used as a visual and narrative tool all the time. But back then, RPGs was feared by some and adored by others. And this sparked a revolution that inspired a generation of creators who would go on to shape gaming and cinema. From dimly lit basements to the lights of Hollywood sets and Blizzard studios, let's take a journey through the impact and evolution of role-playing on video games.
Detected atmosphere, oxygen 34%, nitrogen 60%, ionized particles high, estimated surface temperature 34 degrees Celsius, humidity 90%, bioluminescent gas trace suggests active plant life.
Picture this: a massive spaceship rattling with the hum of engines at full throttle. As you peer through the windshield, a dense, jungle-covered planet comes into view. You and your friends stare in silence, when boom! Your ship is struck by an unknown force, and everything shakes around you.
Unidentified object collision
And suddenly you hit your head. You wake up, eyes slowly adjusting, seeing your friend stagger through the street, just as shocked. The ship crashed in the middle of some alien jungle. What would you do next? Hide? Run away? Prepare for a fight? This could be a scene straight out of Alien or Mass Effect, but for role players it's just another day in the game. Before digital worlds and pixelated heroes, there were dice, maps, and pure imagination. Humans have been role-playing for ages, sometimes to test battle tactics, other times just to imagine a different world. In the early 19th century, games like Kriegspiel taught war strategy, laying the groundwork for the structured creativity that would become RPGs. In the 70s, role-playing was transformed. Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson came together to create the game that would change everything: Dungeons and Dragons. Unlike traditional board games with their set rules, D&D invited players to create their own characters and embark on adventures with no limits. Dice rolls determined success or failure, and a dungeon master guided players through a world only bound by their imaginations. Inspired by Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and the strategic depth of war games, D&D was revolutionary. Honestly, it sounded way more fun than Monopoly back then. D&D blew up, attracting people from all walks of life. But it wasn't all roses. In the US and the UK, some groups viewed D&D as dangerous, even satanic, accusing it of occult influence. But despite the backlash, the game grew even bigger, laying the foundation for the entire RPG industry. And once D&D hit, the world of RPGs exploded with new settings and styles. Horror theme Call of Cthulhu, the dark storytelling of Vampire the Masquerade, and the cyberpunk fantasy of Shadowrun showed just how far the boundaries could stretch. Now, let's go back to the roots of how tabletop RPGs inspired the evolution of video games. In 1979, Adventure hit the Atari 2600, often considered the first adventure game with RPG elements. It introduced mazes, loot, combats, bare-bones stuff sure, but revolutionary for the time. And that same year, Akalabeth, World of Doom, created by Richard Garriott, who would later go on to create Ultima, used simple 3D graphics to bring in ideas that would shape RPGs for decades. And games like Rogue in 1980 introduced procedurally generated dungeons, a concept that still fuels games today, from Hades to Binding of Isaac. So, how influential were RPGs on video game as a whole? Developers poured effort into adapting tabletop mechanics for the screen, making magic happen on a very limited hardware. Progression systems where character level up to unlock tougher areas became staples in Ultima and Wizardry. That same grinding for XP and loot still powers games today, from Final Fantasy Online to Elden Ring. Class system also started with tabletop RPGs, with classic archetypes like Wizard, Rogue and Warrior. Today, skill trees and crafting systems are practically everywhere in gaming, and the basics of quest and exploration they came straight from D&D, laying the foundation for player freedom and creativity in interactive worlds. Interactive storytelling has always been at the heart of tabletop RPGs. A game master controls the story, shaping it real-time with player choices. This role of the GM evolved into today's game designers and narrative designers who craft interactive worlds where players' actions have real consequences. Creating RPGs for computer brought huge challenges. The absence of a game master made early digital RPGs lose some of that storytelling magic. But in the 80s, developers were already trying to capture the essence of D&D and put it into pixels. In Wizardry and Ultima 3 Exodus, we see the early struggles and triumphs. Wizardry established a party system and first-person combat, while Ultima 3 introduced ethical choices and a persistent world. Even if they seem primitive now, they are the DNA of every modern RPG. Ultima 3 alone sold around 120,000 copies, which was impressive at the time. Compared to today, those numbers seem tiny of course, but these games opened up a whole new genre. Soon, Japanese developers would bring their own expertise to the table. And in 1986, Dragon Quest introduced Japanese audiences to brave heroes, mythical creatures and epic quests, cementing the JRPG style. Final Fantasy followed in 1987, pushing the genre even further with deep storytelling. And together these games inspired hundreds of successors from Chrono Trigger to Persona. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past brought real-time combat to RPGs in 1981. But then, Final Fantasy VII hit. I remember playing FF7 and just being blown away. The 3D graphics, the Matthew story, and those cutscenes, unforgettable really. FF7 proved that RPGs weren't just a niche, they could unite millions. This era set the stage for MMORPGs, which was the big next leap. MMORPGs is the genre that transformed no life into a gaming lifestyle. Ultima Online in 1997 kicked things off with a persistent world, and EverQuest 1999 added group quest and immersive environments, setting the stage for the monster that was coming. World of Warcraft didn't just redefine MMORPGs, it reshaped an entire era of gaming. I still remember stepping into Azeroth, wide-eyed, feeling like every mountain and forest was a world waiting for me. With over 12 million active players at its peak, WoW became a global phenomenon, inspiring a whole generation of MMORPGs. Where earlier games had cracked open a door, WoW blew it open, showing the world that virtual worlds could create real-life friendships, rivalries, and memories. And with games like Skyrim in 2011 and The Witcher 3 2015, RPGs evolved, embracing freedom, exploration, and open worlds that feel endless. Today, these mechanics, storytelling, progression, customization are everywhere, from Fortnite to Final Fantasy XIV, creating immersive shared experiences that keep players coming back. More recently, we've seen a true revolution in adapting tabletop adventures, with Baldur's Gate 3 delivering the closest experience yet to a real D&D campaign. Everything about BG3 was incredible for me, from the countless ways to solve even the simplest challenges, to the vast array of dialogue options with nearly every character you encounter. This game makes you feel like you're truly shaping your own story, reinforcing that willing suspension of disbelief that is essential to any kind of fiction. Add a rich D&D inspired universe and a perfect mix of humor and intrigue, and it's no wonder BG3 swept up GOTY 2024, the BAFTA for video games, and the GDC award. But what's perhaps most remarkable is how BG3 captured the hearts of the most important group of all, the players. With over 15 million copies sold, it's a beautiful tribute to pen and paper role-playing, and a sign that players crave these deep, story-driven experiences. And beyond BG3, it's obvious that mechanics from these classic storytelling games are popping up everywhere. Take The Witcher 3 and Divinity Original Sin 2. They embrace multi-layered quests that let you forge your own path, a direct nod to the adaptable storytelling of game like D&D, where even the smallest choice can ripple through the entire narrative. And let's talk character creation. How many hours have we spent tweaking every detail to make the perfect character, crafting strengths and weaknesses that define how we approach challenges? Whether in Skyrim, Cyberpunk, Mass Effect or Fallout 4, it's pure role-playing tradition. Then there's dialogue. Modern games like Disco Elysium and The Outer Worlds have made interactive conversation a pillar of narrative design, inspired by the exchanges between players and game masters in tabletop campaigns. These dialogues shape NPCs' attitudes and shift the story's direction, giving us a sense of control that feels both real and personal. This freedom extends beyond dialogue into the world themselves. Games like Skyrim and Breath of the Wild open up expansive environments where exploration and discovery are driven entirely by the player. This sense of liberty, choosing where to go and what to tackle next, mirrors the heart of traditional role-playing. It pairs well with another element inspired by classic tabletop adventures: crafting and resource management. In Fallout 4 and Red Dead 2, players can customize gear and create items, recalling the artisanal classes in fantasy games that would craft unique items. It adds realism and strategy, enhancing the immersion. And character growth itself, through skill-based progression, is straight out of the original tabletop games, as we said earlier. Elder Scrolls or Kingdom Come Deliverance features skills that improve through use, a direct callback to how characters evolve based on experience. This level of personalization even extends to shaping the world around us. Look at Fallout Shelter or Minecraft, where players created personal spaces, from tiny hideouts to elaborate bases, anchoring the game world in a way that feels personal, like a sanctuary in a campaign actually. It's not about just solo adventure either. Real-time cooperation in games like Divinity Original Sin 2 and Sea of Thieves captures that collaborative spirit that makes pen and paper games so unique. Whether strategizing together or choosing the storyline as a team, there is a shared sense of purpose, just like in group-based games. Then of course there is the layer of moral alignment and ethical choices, where every decision carries weight, affecting reputation and relationship. Games like Mass Effect and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic lean heavily into this, preserving the legacy of classic role-playing. Let's take a last quick detour into pop culture to see how far these games have left their mark. Recently, many movies or TV shows use the D&D material to build their stories. Whether it's like in the latest Dungeons & Dragons movie, using directly the world to create an adventure in it, or whether it's just a part of the plot like in Stranger Things with the Demogorgon. Shows like Community highlight the cultural impact that these add on newer generations, and the wide success of Critical Role on YouTube shows the active interest people still have in this content by reuniting thousands of viewers, and even managing to make a TV show out of these, The Legends of Vox Machina on Amazon Prime. Even famous writers like George Martin, the creator of Game of Thrones, admitted being heavily influenced by D&D while creating the world of Westeros. And I could keep quoting examples like Henry Cavill or Guillermo del Toro. Tabletop RPGs have reshaped the world and influenced hundreds and thousands of artists in the video game medium as well as in cinema, leaving an unforgettable mark on pop culture and still growing. They are a great metaphor of human needs for creative experiences that let them express who they truly are, beyond social norms and requirements. Anyway, thanks for watching, and remember, time you love wasting is never wasted time. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you have learned anything. See you in another video on your second screen.